Hello everybody, it's Robert Brighton again, and welcome back to All That Glitters. Today, we're going to talk about, I think, something that you may find helpful, and that is outlining. And when I say outlining, it's not the traditional dry as dust outlining. This is the Brighton method of outlining your story. And it's very different from most of the things you'll hear. In fact, one of the pieces of bad advice I was given as far as writing is concerned happened in the one writing course that I've taken, which was freshman English in college. And the professor said, really quite emphatically, you can't write anything unless you first put together a complete outline to work from. And, a couple kids probably said, why is that? And professor said, well, that's Edgar Allan Poe he wrote an article about this. And like anybody that, wants to write has to have an outline. If you don't have an outline, it's not any good. You don't know what you're doing. Well, anyway, I didn't think critically at the time about a lot of stuff. And so I sort of took this at face value, not thinking that Poe, was working in, the 1840s or something like that. Lots changed since then. But more than that, maybe that works for Poe. But, I ended up spending years after I got that piece of advice trying to please Mr. Poe and failing at it miserably. I found that I couldn't write an outline for a book. I had an idea for a book, I had an idea for some characters, but I would sit down and I would try to start Roman numeral 1, introduction. Roman numeral 2, we meet, so-and-so. And I would try to outline this thing, and in an hour, I'd just get completely bogged down and discouraged. I didn't know where it was going. Wait a minute, that doesn't make, I don't know. I just ended up chasing my tail to please Mr. Poe. Nothing against Edgar Allan Poe. I actually don't care for much of his writing. I think it's like super florid. It's early 19th century writing, and it's just all this words like eldritch. Anyway, so that's an editorial comment. But anyway, Poe believed that. It probably worked for Poe. Doesn't work for me. So what I have evolved over the years is a completely different method that doesn't require an outline until you've actually started writing. And what I mean by that is maybe think about writing something. It doesn't have to be a book. It can be a presentation. Maybe think about writing the way you would think about completing one of those 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzles, which I've always wanted to do. There's something like uniquely alluring about the idea of taking a box full of jigsaw pieces and putting them out on the table and then, one by one putting together this really pretty picture. Now, the problem is I always have wondered, if I ever get done with this thing, what do I do with it? I scramble it up and do it again? Snoozer. But anyway, but the metaphor works, because think about what happens. If you've ever done a jigsaw puzzle, I think most of us have, maybe not the 1,000-piece variety, but something. If you've done a puzzle, that you take a one piece, that looks like it's a corner, you start there, and then there's another piece, and another piece. It goes very slowly at first, because it's just blank space. There's nothing to follow. Each little piece only gives you a certain amount of information. You're not sure, it's got a certain shape, but you don't really know how it hooks into everything else until you start finding matches. And then, as time goes by, I think you'd agree that it gets faster and faster and faster, because the space starts closing in and you start to see, oh, wait a minute, this piece, that goes there, that goes. So by the time you get to the end of your 1,000 pieces, if you still have retained your sanity, you are going pretty quickly, because it's filling in. The picture is filling in. You start to see what it is you're working toward. That is exactly how I write. So what I don't do is I don't worry about knowing everything about a book or a story or a presentation or this video before I start doing it. So let's say I'm writing a book. I will have in mind a few scenes. I will have in mind some characters. I'll have in mind a setting, perhaps, like Panama with the mosquito god. And if I start writing scenes, now think of each of those scenes as one little piece of your jigsaw puzzle. It has no apparent connection to all the other pieces that you have in front of you, or that, in this case, you're going to create. It doesn't seem to make sense. But the thing is, when you write this scene, scene A, and then you write scene D over here, and scene E and F and all that, all of a sudden, as you start writing more scenes, you start to see a pattern emerge. This is when you start outlining. Because now you have a little bit of a skeleton of a story. And we're going to show you this on the screen. I'm just giving you the conceptual framework right now. But the conceptual framework is don't kill yourself trying to outline your whole story, because I don't believe, except in very rare cases, and Poe may have been one of them, most of what he wrote was short stories, which is a lot easier medium in terms of the complexity than novels. So maybe it is possible to outline a short story, and maybe it's possible that a genius like Poe could outline a whole book. I don't know. I can't. I don't think most people can. I think it actually is a good way to kill creativity, because you're looking at your outline, you're thinking, how do I make Roman numeral 3 hook on to Roman numeral 5? And that means you have to contrive a bunch of stuff in the middle, and contrived is always going to come across as contrived, because you're just desperate to fill in your outline, which to me defeats the purpose of writing. Your purpose in writing is to tell a good story, not write a good outline. It's turning the whole world on its head. So I'm trying to save you if you ever get the advice that you need to have an outline to work from. I do believe that as you go along, and we'll see this in great detail, I do believe as you go along, codifying what you do in a rough outline form and using that outline to rearrange and test different ways of structuring and pacing your story, now that is phenomenal. But again, you're only using as the elements in your outline the things you've actually written. Every once in a while, you might put in one that you just know there's a scene you want to write, and I just write to be written after it on the outline. But do not kill your creativity by placing too many demands on yourself to do this outline. To me, it's the equivalent of, you ever been camping? You start a little fire, a little campfire. Well, how do you start a campfire? You start it really small, and you add a little twig, and you add a little twig, and you add a piece of grass or something like that. And all of a sudden, it's kind of blazing up, and then bigger twigs and all that. And before long, you can have a bonfire. But if you have a little tiny fire going, and then you come with an armload of wood and you dump it on there, guess what? You just put the fire out. That's what I think these outline techniques are this directive, to make sure that you understand everything about your story and your characters and the plot and the setting and everything before you write a word. It's not realistic. If you can do it, hats off to you. But I actually don't think it's a very common ability to do that. And over the years, I have to tell you, I have evolved, as you will, I have evolved the ability to keep an enormous amount of information in my head at one time. You have to, and that's another reason why momentum is important, because, you will forget. No matter how striking things are to you, you will forget if you set your work aside for too long. But if you're working steadily on it, you'll find, as I have, that you can keep a lot of things, a lot of balls in the air in your head simultaneously. But, to take that creative process and direct it toward just writing an outline is a waste of your talent. And your time. So that is my little soapbox speech today. When we come back, I'm going to start getting into a really hot topic, and that is dialogue. So stay tuned. There's a lot ahead. Thank you. Hello.